I am 25 years old. Since I was born, all I have known is the war in Somalia. The Islamists kill anyone who doesn't think like them. I come from the village of Galgala. When I was 4 years old, my father took me to my uncle in Hargeisa. He did this for my safety and education. My mother stayed with my brothers and sisters in the village. Later, I went to Addis Ababa in Ethiopia to pursue my higher education. That is when the bad news started. They killed my father and 2 of my brothers. A third one disappeared. I decided to return to Hargeisa. I wanted to sell our land and save the rest of my family. My uncle gave me a warning.
They will kill you like they did your relatives.
Who are they? Members of the Al-Shabaab Mujahideen.
We know you want to come back to the village. You will die, apostate. Prepare your shroud. We will find you, wherever you are.
I went back to Hargeisa anyway. My mother knew about the threats.
Go, my son. Go as far as you can.
She convinced me. I disguised myself as a beggar to escape and returned to Addis Ababa. That's how I got the idea to go to Europe.
Kinder, InfoMigrants is an online portal through which heartbreaking human stories come to you.
InfoMigrants is a site about migrants, for migrants. Many of them tell us their stories to shed light on what really goes on. This is what prompted Mohammad to share his story with us. He told us that thousands of migrants are being tortured and abused in Libya and that they need help. But this story has no pictures or images, so how do you talk about it?
I draw the information with a technique called news sketching. For security reasons, some stories are impossible to tell with original sound and image. People's lives are at stake. Their families' lives are at stake, so it can have consequences. Moreover, the audience does not suffer as much from the harsh reality behind the sketches. They act as a filter, which protects the viewer from the pain that such stories can cause.
And all the information is verified.
In July 2017, I left Ethiopia with a group of young men and smugglers. On the 16th of July, we entered Sudan through Galabat. In Omdurman, we ate our last meal on Sudanese territory. The smugglers wanted to weaken us so that we would be easy to control along the road to Libya. The hunger and torture started in Sudan. We reached the desert and stayed there for 6 days. We came across a military roadblock. The smugglers paid. We entered Libya on the 28th of July, 2017. They put us in a truck. They covered the roof inside the cities and opened it in the desert.
It's difficult to get to Europe.
He had to cross Somalia, Ethiopia, Sudan to reach Libya. Their political instability and insecurity has led to the emergence of criminal groups that exploit migrants.
We were in the Al Kufra region, near the village of Tazerbu. We arrived at what looked like a warehouse. There was a building surrounded by a courtyard where vehicles and armed guards were stationed. There was a gate with a big padlock and several rooms used for smuggling cigarettes, drugs, and alcohol. They put us in a basement. After 7 months, there were 79 of us. We were treated with such brutality, harassment, insults, torture, rape, murder. I will never forget those who were there with me. Some of them helped me. We didn't know how long we would stay in this place. We had no contact with the outside world. The smugglers held on to our mobile phones most of the time. They would only allow us to make calls, to bring them money.
How did the smugglers extort money from the migrants?
They did it in different ways. They filmed migrants while they were torturing them or sometimes raping them. They then would send the footage to the families and demand money for their children's release.
We only had one meal a day, pasta and water. 25 people died from tuberculosis or violent treatment by the smugglers. They would come in to give us food and hit us. They would ask the girls to come upstairs or order them to undress. I once tried to stop them from hitting a pregnant woman. They hit her anyway. She lost her baby. Our spirits were crumbling. No one knew what was going on in our strange world. Each of us had our own story and our own motivations. Amina was stronger than all that. Here, in this miserable place, a wonderful energy emanated from her. She held on to hope. Everyone wanted to know her secret. She prayed and fasted. She was compassionate with others. Her unwavering piety meant the smugglers did not dare to approach her. She's Somali, like me. She comes from Mogadishu. All she has left in life is her mother. I saw her in the first month that I entered the warehouse. Little by little, we got to know each other and talk. She was 4 years younger than me. She was different. Her presence comforted me. She told me about her dreams and what she wanted after this nightmare. She was sure she would make it. She drew me into her world, and I believed everything she said. And then one day I told her what I wanted. I said, I want to stay with you for the rest of my life. In the middle of the Libyan desert, in an underground warehouse with 80 other prisoners, tortured, looking like the undead, I proposed to her. She accepted. Our dream became everybody's business. They surrounded us as if we represented their own hope. We had to legitimize our union. I wanted to talk to her mother in Somalia. Friends helped us to get a phone. After several attempts, we managed to reach her. She immediately gave us her blessing. But there was another important step. We needed a religious guarantor. In our underground world, there was a man of faith. He agreed to marry us, acting as imam. It was surely the first marriage of its kind in this place. We committed to a life together. Two months after our wedding, a dispute broke out between the smugglers. We learned that some of us were to end up somewhere else. Other smugglers came and took us by force. They separated us into two groups. I tried to talk to them, but they hit me with an iron object. I was unable to move as I saw them taking one group away in two vehicles. My wife was with them. I was reeling. The first vehicle rolled over as it left the scene. The second one, with my wife in it, arrived in Beni Walid, to the north. She stayed there for a few months, and they decided to take her to the coast. They asked her for $10,000. She only paid $2,000. Sometimes they still took people, even if they hadn't paid the full amount. On the way to the coast, the driver lost control. Several people died. Amina survived, along with 25 other migrants. They were taken to a hospital in Beni Walid. A Libyan journalist wanted to find out more about the circumstances of the accident, but the armed men prevented him.
Mohammad knew all these details, but much later. You will see what happened to Amina and how Mohammad learned her story.
The smugglers do not respect marriage or human dignity.
The smugglers don't know anything about human rights and dignity. They don't respect love, marriage, or any human relationship. As we'll see, the abduction of these migrants also led to the exploitation of their bodies.
The migrants who survived the crash were placed in a room in a strange and frightening hospital. The door was locked and guarded. Amina was with 7 other people. Some of the men wore security uniforms and took migrants to be locked up and sold. They took Amina to a room and she was left alone. She panicked because it looked like an operating theater. She felt that something aberrant was taking place in this hospital. She opened the door and ran away. That's when she saw the journalist who had been stopped from speaking to the migrants. But he insisted on staying at the hospital because a girl whose mother had died in the accident told him that something strange was happening there. Amina talked to him in the toilet because there was no other way. She told him that migrants were disappearing and that the situation was terrifying. He believed her and contacted the security forces working with the United Nations. New armed men arrived immediately. The others disappeared. They found a girl who had had her kidney removed, confirming Amina's suspicions.
Every passing second is a death threat to Amina.
Finding Amina was Mohammed's only motivation. He decided he would not suffer the abuse of the smugglers anymore. There was no going back. The more time passed, the more danger Amina was in. He had to act.
Meanwhile, we were moved to another place. It was a farm not far from Tazerbu. There was a house for the smugglers and a big warehouse for us. There was a wall around the warehouse. Cars entered the yard through a gate. Here, there was even more cruelty in store for us. They tortured people with electricity. They took women at night and sent them back in the morning. One of the girls died a few hours after she returned. I stayed there for several months and tried to find out about my wife. Was she still alive? Would I be able to go out and find her? I started to think about an escape plan. I talked to other migrants. Some of them were very scared. They chose me to be their leader because of my actions and because I had been around for longer. I always tried to defend the girls who were harassed and tortured. They respected me. The escape plan was quite simple, as you will see. I thought of all the details, like the choice of day, for example. We counted the number of smugglers who usually came to see us. There were between 3 and 7 each time. We were about to pass the point of no return. We decided to carry out our plan on the 26th of January 2018, a Friday, when many people go to the mosque for prayers. If we could get there, the congregation would help us, I told them. It was our best strategy against the gunmen. We were especially afraid of the men who wore police or army uniforms. They were in cahoots with the smugglers. I know they were accomplices. The supervisor of the warehouse also wore a uniform. We had to wait for the meal before we could act. Even if there were more than 3 of them, even if they were armed, there were many, many more of us.
Mohammad is young. He's a computer science student. He has no experience in fighting or confrontation.
Despite his young age, Mohammad was able to devise and execute a plan against the smugglers for himself and others. He was a student, a pacifist. But his plan made him into a leader. He wanted to use the element of surprise against the smugglers. The others agreed to follow him.
I pretended to talk to them, followed by 10 other friends. We tied them up. There were also some outside. They tried to stop us. We fought and overcame them. We tied them up too and went out the front door. There were more than 90 of us. We walked through the desert for about an hour. The strongest of us carried the weakest. There were a dozen sick people. 2 of them died. We arrived in Tazerbu. The people in the mosque were stunned to see us. We looked like the living dead. They asked us a lot of questions. They took pictures of us, and then the police arrived. We stayed there for 4 days. Afterwards, they took us to the city of Al Kufra, which has an airport. With the help of the mayor and some other people, we stayed in a shelter for about 2 months. The police treated us with respect. The director of the shelter supported us and sent us under military protection to Tripoli, where the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees is located.
At this point in the story, Mohammad knows nothing about Amina.
Neither of them knew what happened to the other. Despite this, Amina never gave up hope. She refused to leave Libya without Mohammad. When she arrived at the UN center, she recounted what had happened to her. She said she knew her husband was alive and that she'd wait for him.
I arrived in front of a building and stood in a queue. My wife was there. She saw me. She ran towards me. A soldier stopped her. She said she wanted to see her beloved, her husband. They didn't believe her. She started shouting my name. I begged a soldier to let me see her. They finally believed us. We never thought we'd see each other again. Our happiness was indescribable.
When Mohammad arrived at the UN center, he was surprised to find that they knew almost everything about him. Amina told them the whole story. It shows her instinctive intelligence. She was in her early 20s. She didn't overthink things. She acted with lucidity to preserve her life and Mohammed's.
In November 2018, they took us to Niger, where there was a mission of the French Office for the Protection of Refugees and Stateless Persons. It was the beginning of a new life.
Mohammad and Amina are wise beyond their years, thanks to their experience, from the moment they left their country to their arrival in Libya and beyond. And their shared experience continues today.